everyone, this is Lance Hightower, one of the Cryptid brothers, coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's a beautiful day here, sun is out, not a cloud in the sky, and instead of going to that park that I normally do intros, I thought I'd just go in my backyard here and do one. I've been working the last week doing a lot of these interviews for you guys, so we appreciate all the people that call in. And when you call in, if you could please just give us a couple of weeks before we get back to you. In addition to that, we have a website is coming up, and we also have Rob. He's finishing up some touches to get the finalized sculptures out, that Series 1, the Dogman. If you call in to our toll-free number, you want to talk, you've got something to report, we appreciate you calling. First of all, it takes a lot of courage to call. If you're calling for questions that you want me to respond to, instead of calling with questions, if you'll go ahead and email me at cryptidbrothersinvestigations@gmail.com, that's an easier way. Just ask the question and I can type out the answer. Otherwise, if it's a report of something you've seen, something you've encountered, you can go ahead and call our toll-free number. That would be the easiest, and so that'll be just much easier. If you have questions, it's going to be really hard for me to get to you as busy as we are, because I generally bump up the encounter or someone has had an eyewitness to something first, because those people are in a traumatic state sometimes and just want to share fairly quick. And we will try to get with you as soon as possible. If you call and leave a message and I don't get to you instantly, it's just because I've got so many people in front of you that have called and I'm just kind of working down my list. So I'm going to apologize ahead of time for that, but I will contact you. I can guarantee if you left a message, I will contact you. So we're going to get right into the episode. The reason why it looks different, I've got a fire versus earlier. It had a daytime first half of the intros. I had a glitch on the second half. So anyway, I'm with my wife. You can't see her. She's out of the film over here. And we got a fire going. And so we're going to get right into the episode here. This was a gentleman that was a truck driver. He called me. He was upset, as you'll hear. Let's just go to the episode now, and you'll see why this was a terrifying event, and he'll never forget it.
When I called your group, and then I had left a message, and I ended up calling another one. The other one called me back first, and when I explained what happened, I pretty much got called a fearmonger, trying to get people to shoot on sight and crap like that, and that wasn't what I was trying. But they pretty much they accused me of misrepresenting what I saw in the way it behaved. And I'm sorry if it didn't jive with, what someone else thinks happens, but what happened to me wasn't so peaceful. I've been a truck driver for about 3.5 years now. Prior to that, I was in the Army for 13. So, I've seen some stuff, but to be fair, nothing that quite prepared me for this. I was traveling on the I-22, headed to a town or a yard in Mississippi, when one of the tires on my rig blew out. Now, with the loads that you can carry on a tractor trailer, tire blows out, you got to pull over,
Right.
So there wasn't any truck stops near, and so I just pulled over on an off-ramp, maybe about 30, 40 miles east of the Alabama-Mississippi line. Pulled off on the side of the road. I've got my parking lights on, but I've turned off the headlights. Called my boss. He gave me a number to call. I called them, and they tell me it's going to be about 2.5, 3 hours before anyone can get to me. So I'm just waiting. And I turned the truck off, rolled down the windows a bit, because You know, it was nice and cool out, and I don't mind the cool. It wasn't like so cold, you know, you're freezing or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So the truck's off, windows are down. I'd probably been sitting there for about 30, 45 minutes. Now, you've got the shoulder where there's pavement, and then beside that, you've got about 3 or 4 feet of gravel. I start hearing something crunching in the gravel. Now, I look first to the driver's side mirror. Don't see nothing on that side. Then I look to the passenger side, and I see this big shadow block out the lights on my trailers. Before I can really think to react to that, I call him Big Boy because I really don't know what else to call him.
Okay.
He steps in front of the passenger side window.
Oh,
Now, to
my
give
God.
you a bit of scale, I'm 6'4". The bottom of the windows and the doors
Mm-hmm.
is approximately 6.5 feet high. Okay?
Okay.
Add in another 2 to 2.5 feet of window to the top of the window, and then, you know, you get to the further to the height of the semi itself. He was so tall that I couldn't see the top of his head in the window.
Good night.
In fact, I could just see the top of his brow line, like just above his eyes.
Whoa. So we're
So
saying 8 foot plus.
I'm thinking between 9 and 10, to be fair.
Whoa.
Now, you know, I've got the dash lights on and stuff like that, but I don't have the internal lights on, like the overhead lights.
Yes, sir. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So all I've really got is the dashboard illumination. But it was enough, you know, because I've been sitting there that my eyes got adjusted, that I could make out some detail, even though there were still some shadows and stuff, you know.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I remember being able to smell. It was real musky. Now, I know you hear all the time about it, you know, smelling like a skunk. And that's not quite right. It was like a cross between... It was more similar to like the musky odor of a ferret or something like that, you know.
Oh, okay.
But at the same time, different, and it was much stronger. You know, it didn't like turn my stomach, but it was definitely different than anything I've smelled before.
Okay.
And I've been around a lot of animals. My family's been raising wolves since I was 5.
Oh.
I've volunteered at wildlife sanctuaries, working with, you know, bears, big cats, you know, stuff like that. So I've been around animals a lot, you know. And this was completely unlike anything I'd ever smelled before.
And again,
His face, huh?
And again, that window was down.
The window was cracked about 3 inches.
Oh, okay.
So his eyes were looking right through the crack of the window.
Oh, wow.
Definitely. It felt more like looking into a person's eyes than an animal's. There was some definitive intelligence there. Um, the face of him looked kind of like a cross between a person and maybe a gorilla. Had a little bit of a flattened appearance to it.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, certain aspects like the nose and the brow were a little more prominent than you would see like on a gorilla or something like that.
Okay. Yes.
Not completely flat. Now, I couldn't really see the color that well, but it was dark enough, like the hair was dark enough that I would say it was either really, really, really dark brown or black. He had it over most of what I could see, with portions of his face kind of free of hair, kind of like a real almost leathery appearance. And he did not look happy.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And when I looked at him and locked eyes with him, that was when the first time he growled.
Oh.
And it was a deep, kind of a chest, deep in his chest growl. Not snarling, but just that low, deep growl. Now, what I'm going to say next is going to sound like bravado, but there's actual a reason behind why I did what I did.
Sure.
Now, my company's policy is no firearms. Okay?
Okay.
But I have a 10.5-inch kukri that I typically keep strapped to the armrest on my chair. Because stuff does happen to truck drivers, you know?
Oh, yeah. I am only imagine.
And having been in the military, I was in Iraq twice, Afghan once. To say that my fight or flight is a little bit skewed one way, could be a fair way of calling it.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
I don't typically run. And you got a pissed off, big boy like that. It wasn't that I necessarily thought I was going to be able to take him down, but was more or less along the lines of like dealing like you would with a large predator.
Right.
You convince him that whatever reward he gets isn't going to be worth what happens to him. Make the risk outweigh the reward. Like I said, with his height alone, if he truly wanted to take me down, there wasn't much more I could do except try to take some pieces of him with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I pulled that knife. And I had it in my hand, and he looked right at it. And I can't explain how I know this, but I'm pretty damn sure he knew exactly what it was.
That's what I hear all the time and time again. They know exactly what those are and what firearms are.
And so here I am staring him dead in his eyes. And I've got this not a small knife in my hands. And that was when he growled again. And then I don't know if he hit it flat-handed or he had his fist balled up because I couldn't see him. All right? Now, keep in mind, he's standing more or less straight upright, okay? He wasn't cocked towards me or anything like that. Just, I would probably guess he was kind of standing there flat-footed. Now, I didn't see him raise his arms, which means to me, I'm pretty sure he bent his arms at the elbow, okay? And he was maybe a foot or two from the side of the truck.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure he hit with both hands. and he slammed that truck. Now, a semi is not a small thing, but that whole truck rocked.
Really? Whoa.
And it wasn't like, he took a step back so he could really throw his weight into it.
Mm-hmm.
He was, I'd imagine to be the equivalent of a 1-inch punch, like from Bruce Lee.
Oh, yes.
But still had enough force that he rocked that whole damn truck.
Dang.
Side to side. And he growled louder. And he did it again and again. The whole truck rocks. And the whole time I'm still staring, and I see a small crack starting to form in the glass of the door. And he growls and he slams it a third time. And that crack goes all the way up to the top of the glass. And I did the only thing I could think of to do. I said, you know what, boy? You want it? I'm going to make you work for it. You might take me down, but I'm going to take some pieces of you with me. And you could just see that, his whole face, he was just getting more and more pissed off. And that was when he roared. I've been looking stuff up since this happened. You hear about the howls, and the whistles and stuff, and this was not a howl, it was not a whistle. This was a straight, all the way from the bottom of his gut roar.
Man.
I could feel it in my chest.
Man.
And I can't explain how I knew, but I knew it was a challenge.
Oh,
That
wow.
everything up to that point was him trying to establish dominance of the situation.
Mm.
He was acting like I would associate with an alpha male wolf
Mm-hmm.
to what he perceived to be a challenger. Now I knew there was no way I was going to match that roar. So without even breaking eye contact, I reached up and I pulled the chain on my air horn and held it down.
Oh, wow.
Just as long as he did. And that was the first time he flinched. Like he wasn't expecting it,
Right.
On the truck, you got a city horn, you got the air horn. I didn't hit the city horn.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was the only thing I could think of to be as loud as him. And like I said, he blinked and flinched and kind of jerked back a little bit like he wasn't expecting that. And I didn't let him catch a breath. I hit it a second time. And he jerked back again, and that time he actually took a step back. I didn't let him regain control.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, if I let him regain control, that glass wasn't going to stop him. There wasn't a doubt in my mind he could reach all the way through that truck and grab me on the other side.
Man.
I couldn't let him regain control.
Right.
And I hit the horn a third time. And he stepped back again. And you could kind of just see he still had the anger in his face, but there was confusion too. Like he didn't know what to do about it,
Right, right.
And he didn't roar again. He made kind of like a best way to describe it, like some kind of under your breath noise. And then he turned and, stepped off. And that was the thing that probably meant that, something that big once he was on the grass didn't make a sound. And I'm sorry about cursing, man.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
He didn't make a sound once he was on that grass. Something that big.
That's incredible. Man.
Going back to the kind of hair on him.
Mm-hmm.
You ever seen a lion's mane?
Yes, sir.
Kind of like the way it moves.
Right.
That's the way the hair on him moved when he moved. You know, like you see like the muscles and whatnot on, you know, under his skin and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But when he would turn and make any kind of moves or whatnot, that was kind of like what the hair looked like. It was like the hair on a lion's mane. Not really tangled up and knotted like you would see on a bear. You know?
Right.
It wasn't real nappy looking.
It appeared possibly groomed to a certain degree then.
Yeah. Whether or not he had been, you know, I wouldn't necessarily say it had been brushed, but it was, you know, it wasn't all nappy or matted or anything like that.
Right.
I wouldn't necessarily say clean either, but, you know, it wasn't all tangled up in knots.
Man.
Now, you know, I get back and I tell my boss to meet me at the yard. Because I don't know how I'm going to explain this to him.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
The door had been beat in so bad that you couldn't open it.
What? Good night.
I found out later when my boss got the door replaced.
Mm-hmm.
It took 3 men to pry that door off enough so they could get it out.
Gosh.
It had completely warped in the door frame of the semi.
Whoa.
And according to my boss, they had to use crowbars to pry it open enough they could take it off the hinges.
Dang.
So with 3 double-handed hits, you know.
Man.
This thing was powerful.
And was pissed.
Oh, yeah. And he was definitely pissed off at me. He was pissed off that I was there.
I was going to ask you, what do you think he was pissed about? Or, I mean...
Well, okay, if I was applying this to animals, okay, you've got a few possibilities. Territory, young, or dominance. Now, as he was the only one I saw, could I say for a fact that there was young or a family group involved? No. Was I in his territory? If he was there, I guess he might have considered it his territory. But there was definitely the feeling of a dominance challenge. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I've been through that one, you know, like I said, been raising wolves most of my life. And so I know the kind of the feeling, and it's not so much you can really say any particular action, but you know it when the wolf wants to challenge.
Mm.
And, you know, I had to learn the rules to the wolves. I had to learn their rules in order to be able to, you know, interact with them safely and stuff like that. And I've always had a very unique kind of personal energy / insight with wolves that they typically, you know, accept me as their own. As weird as that may sound. But it had, honestly, a lot of it felt like a dominance challenge. trying to figure out who was the biggest, baddest in the yard.
Gotcha.
If I had tried to turn tail and run, that probably would have been the worst thing I could have done. And, whether or not I had any illusions about what I could have done to him or not, the best I could do was make him rethink it.
Absolutely.
But he definitely looked like he wanted a piece.
How long had you been there when you pulled off to the side? How long had you been there before you started hearing that crunching of the gravel?
Like I said, about maybe 30. I've probably been sitting there for about 30, 45 minutes. So, not even a full hour. I damn sure didn't imagine it.
Right. And this really, it sounds like this wasn't an official pullover area. This was just off to the
Oh, no. There wasn't even street lights on the road, on the overpass.
Mm-hmm.
It was like middle of nowhere. There was an overpass because there was an exit. But, you didn't see any lights anywhere other than, when cars were coming by. And this was probably, I don't know, somewhere between 2:30, 3 a.m. Central Time.
Okay.
When it happened. So it wasn't a whole lot of cars on the road highway either.
Was the area, could you describe kind of the topography or the area as far as
There was woods maybe 30 yards, 30 to 35 yards from the side of the road. Heavy growth, or, like heavy undergrowth. Probably from where, they would cut it back from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
It was a straight, just off ramp. You go up the little hill, stop sign at the top, probably, and an on ramp on the other side.
Hmm.
With a road going over a bridge over the highway. Lots of woods everywhere. The side, when I first stopped, I'd gotten out to make sure which tire it was. And the grass wasn't that tall on the side of the road. So, 6-8 inches tall, give or take.
Right. And this was what time of the year? What season?
This was last month.
Oh, last month.
Yeah, when I had called, it had been when I called y'all's phone number, it had been about a week since it had happened.
And like you said, you did call someone else, and I didn't get a chance to get immediately back to you, but you did call, and they didn't really believe what you said, correct?
They told me that these things don't get aggressive. They told me, we don't need people like you trying to fearmonger, trying to rile people up, trying to get these things shot on site. We're about respect and research. And I'm like, well, maybe y'all should tell them that.
Exactly.
It wasn't like I was out there looking for this.
Exactly.
He come up on me. And I say he because, well, his whole attitude was overwhelmingly masculine and male,
Mm-hmm.
But they were sitting there trying to say I was trying to start some kind of witch hunt or something like that. And I was just like, are you seriously talking like this?
Well, you know what I find very interesting from what you just said, and I'm not saying this with everybody by no means, and I don't want to generalize, but I find it very, very interesting that out of the folks who tend to discredit very quickly a story from someone kind of spilling their guts out of what happened that was not a pleasant encounter, or even just, let's go opposite, a friendly encounter, the people to discredit a story or an encounter like this tends to be the very people that are in this genre, this Bigfoot community. And I find that very interesting how they want to peg they're so certain that Bigfoot act this way all the time, or that way all the time, or they can't do this, or they never do that. And I've learned, here's the thing that is that there is no absolutes. Anything can happen at any time, anywhere, to anyone. No one is the expert. And like you said, someone didn't notify this creature that it had to behave a certain way. It did what it did. And for whatever reasons, and I think you're right on track. It was either in a hunting ground, it had members around, it was trying to protect young, this was his area, a dominance. Who knows exactly? Maybe it was a couple of reasons of what you just mentioned. Maybe it was a couple of them. And
I was trying to, like, when I was thinking about it later, I was trying to, on one hand, I was putting kind of like my experience, both with people and with large animals, and was just kind of trying to reason it out. How would I reason that encounter if it had been a bear or something else, and that was about the only thing I could come to. It was one of those three things.
And I think they're very logical. I always say that, these beings, these creatures, do nothing by accident. There's always intention and purpose, because that's how they've been able to survive and thrive. And so they don't understand the same rules of you and I, where we have courtesy and manners. They just react. They're very reactive in their personality, and that's how they've been able to survive. And so they don't know the rules of humans as far as social. They don't.
Well, that's why I kind of treated him like I would a large predator.
Yes.
Yes. I treated him the same way as I would a wolf. That I'm not backing down. I'm not gonna just give it whatever it is to you. I stood my ground because I knew better than turn and run. Because everything I did for a reason, because what my experience has taught me. If a predator thinks that, the prey animal is going to hurt it more than anything it will gain by killing and eating it, it will back off.
Mm-hmm.
And all I could think of was, think long and hard about this, because I'm going to do whatever I can to you.
I'm just thinking here, I wonder how far it would have gone had you not laid on that horn.
I'll tell you honest, if it had reached in, I would have done my level best to take its hand.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in that situation, my knife is pretty damn sharp. I've carried it since my first deployment to a combat zone. It's strong and it's sharp. And it has saved my butt a few times. If he had reached in, I probably would have been aiming for where I would assume arteries or something like that would be.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be doing whatever it took. And if I could have taken a hand or taken his arm before he got to me, I would have. Might it have, saved my life? Probably not. But, whatever happened, I wasn't going to make it easy on him. I wouldn't say it was fear that was running through, but rather adrenaline.
Mm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like
Oh, yeah. Oh,
the same
absolutely.
feeling like, when you're in a firefight. And you might live, you might die, but by God, you're going to take, some kind of honor guard with you.
Yes, sir. Yep.
And that was how I just kind of, treating him like I would, like I said, a large predator. But at the same time, with the understanding, live or die, I'm taking some chunks.
When he backed off, how did he, on that third time you laid on the horn, how did he leave or depart the circumstance?
So, looking at it from his perspective where he was, standing, he did this kind of, like I said, under his breath, kind of grumble kind of sound. And then he turned to his left, and then he was out of sight of the window. And it took me a few seconds before I got up enough to try to look out there,
Mm.
But he was gone. I mean, he was gone. So in 2 or 3 seconds, he had covered 35 yards.
Wow. Incredible.
And he did it without and once, like I said, once he was off the gravel, he did it without a sound.
Super stealth.
It was like he knew how to move.
Mm-hmm. And when he moved, did it look a little strange, or could you tell?
Whenever I saw him moving at any point in the whole encounter, it was very fluid and with purpose. It wasn't jerky or anything like that. It wasn't somebody in a suit.
Yeah. Well, that's you. We see this and you hear this time and time again. Is that when you talk with someone that had an encounter this close and that dramatic, that terrifying, they know this was not a human. I can tell you this was not a guy in a suit.
You could give me a running start and throw my entire body against that truck, and it wouldn't rock like it did when he hit it. I'm not a small guy. I'm 6'4", right at 300 pounds. I got some weight on me, but it's not, it's not like I'm, 5 feet around. But I could throw my entire body at that truck and not rock it the way he did.
Man, the amount of strength that has to take.
And like I told you, the door was completely warped in the frame. They had, 2 guys on the outside with crowbars, another guy on the inside pulling on the door handle and pushing with all, to get that thing out so they could replace it.
Man.
He had completely jammed up that door.
So when you told your boss and these guys, how did he act or behave? Yeah.
My boss, 6 huge dents in the side of this truck. Looked like someone had taken a hammer, one of those big mallets out of the cartoons, or like those, the carnival game where you use the hammer, try to ring that bell.
Oh, yes.
The dents were that big. And my boss, he goes, "What the hell happened?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to tell you the truth, and you're going to react one of 2 ways. You're either going to call me crazy and fire me on the spot, or you're going to believe what happened, you're going to believe what I tell you, and we go from there." And to his credit, he listened. He didn't can me on the spot, But he just had this, it was one of those, it was obviously incredibly hard to believe. But at the same time, the evidence was sitting right there in front of You know?
Right. I mean,
how do you explain what had been done to the truck?
So obviously, in not canning you, he had at least some reservations of like, this probably happened.
Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, either he thought I was crazy or he thought I was making it up, or he at least gave me the benefit of the doubt. And I still work for the guy, so I'm guessing he gave me the benefit of the doubt.
Wow. How about the guys changing the door out? Did they say anything?
I don't know. I wasn't actually present for that.
Okay.
He told me about it after that, and he was like, because me and him had tried to open the door. Now, he's not a bigger guy. You know, he's about maybe 5'4", 5'5", nowhere near my size or weight, and we couldn't get it open. And he said that it took 3 of the mechanics at the shop with 2 crowbars.
Dang. That is incredible. And that door, obviously, on a semi-truck is not fiberglass. It's not aluminum. It's metal. It's sheet metal.
Yeah.
And it's got an internal frame. I mean, it's stout. If anybody's been on a rig like that before, there's nothing about it that's light or flimsy.
No, it's everything about a rig is made to haul extreme amounts of weight, and everything is built to that design. Whereas, you know, parts of the cab might be fiberglass, you know, but the main body of the cab is not fiberglass. Trucks are rough. Trucks are brutal. You know, they have to be able to take, you know, much more extreme amounts of torque and force than your average car. You know, it's got to be able to, it's an 80,000 pound wrecking ball when it's going down the highway, and you have to respect it like that. Well, at the same time, knowing that everything about that rig, the trailers, everything was designed with that purpose in mind, was to haul 80,000 pounds, 40 tons. And, you know, whenever I would have students on my trucks, I would tell them, respect this truck like you would a gun. And for him to be able to do that to that truck, you know, whether or not it was sitting still.
Right. Have you told or shared this story aside from your boss and this other group that you called? Have you shared the story with anyone else? And if so, how have they reacted, or what did they say?
Well, I told my wife, of course, in her normal little smart aleck way. You know, she believes me. She made the joke of it. She likes to call me tickle feet sometimes. It's the only spot on me that's ticklish. And so she made the joke of tickle feet's all the biggie feet. You know, yeah, that sums up our relationship. I think
Gotcha.
fairly well.
Gotcha. Well, I just ask because sometimes people, you know, even if you have a person that has, you know, that's always jokeful, and when they tell a story like this or have a close encounter that was really shook them up, you can tell their demeanor changes. Something happened, and I was just.
Well, I mean, she didn't really, you know, start out with that. Obviously, you know, that came after a few days of, I guess, you know, taking it in. And then, like I said, you know, she started making that joke, you know, to the point where, you know, she bought this thing. It's a little noisemaker. I kid you not. It says emergency Bigfoot translator. And it's got 4 buttons: howl, snort, roar, and groan. And every once in a while she'll just push one of the buttons and go, tickle feet's all the biggie feet. And I'm like, you're not funny. You know, it's just a little whatever, you know, noisemaker thing she got in some store. But, you know, it was just kind of her way of saying, you know, hey, this happened. but we're not going to sit back here and look on it, any kind of crazy way.
Right. Right. Wow.
She's not trying to make fun of me. She's just she'd rather laugh it away.
Right. And she's probably trying to help you not be so absorbed in it, maybe to a certain degree.
I was hit with an IED. Responding to, like, my personal response to such situations, after some of the things that happened in Iraq and Afghanistan, I like to consider myself fairly resilient. I don't really have, nightmares about what happened with Big Boy. It was just, it happened.
Right. Well, I think anyone that served in the military in the capacity and faced what you faced in the military, if you will, that it's almost like it pre-groomed you for that encounter to a certain degree, because I find that people that don't have a huge event in their life, like going in the military and being active, and they've never been, or something major in their life had not happened, and when they come up against an encounter like that, it messes them up. It really shakes their world, and they have a traumatic response or an event that they can get post-traumatic from it very seriously, and it's hard for them to deal and cope.
And I'm not trying to say I'm any better than anyone else out there.
Oh, no, no. Right,
That's not what I'm trying to say. Has it, affected me like that? No. Does that mean I'm weaker or stronger than someone else? No. I had to do a lot of soul search when I was in the military over stuff like this. And, some people work through stuff quicker. It's just the way it is.
Right. Exactly. So again, where this happened, this was, what was I hate repeating same questions here, but just for everyone listening, this was off which highway and roughly in which state was this?
It was I-22 in Alabama, about 30, 40 miles from the Alabama-Mississippi line. And like I said, it happened, I don't know, maybe 2:33 a.m. Central Time, which is where I was, sitting at the time. Middle of nowhere, Alabama.
Mm-hmm. And not that it matters, but out of curiosity, what color is your rig, your cab?
The whole truck's white.
White, okay. And during this time, obviously nobody was driving by or anything. It was just you and him.
If anyone was driving by, I didn't notice them at that point. At least why they weren't driving on the off ramp, or on the little overpass. If there was someone going down the highway, I couldn't have told you how many cars did or didn't go, because all of my attention was on him.
Mm.
And like I said, he was on the passenger side of the truck, so it wasn't like he got lit up by anything either,
Right.
My truck would have been between him and any headlights.
When he was standing facing you very close there on that passenger side, now I realize that the windows are not terribly wide on those, but they're decent for a commercial vehicle. How wide do you think he was roughly?
Easily as wide as the entire door. He actually brushed up against the mirror. The mirror's mounted on the frame, not the door.
Oh, wow. Incredible.
He was every bit as wide as that door.
Which we're saying maybe plus 4 feet at least.
Somewhere between 3 and 4 feet, maybe.
Man.
You know, he was big, not just tall but broad, and you know, he had some decent power, which means that he had to have easily the weight to back it up. So, you know, like I said, 300 pounds, give me a running start, I wouldn't shake the truck like he did. Man. And he was standing flat-footed. You know, he was full on to me.
Man. You know what makes me wonder here, and it's I mean, I don't want to think about it, but my mind goes there, is that if we were out in the woods not being protected by a cab in a semi-truck like you were, and you were just out, say, camping, and this thing came up, I mean, you had nothing between you and him. You just hate, your mind hates to go there, but what would he, you know, if he was already this aggressive, you wonder what the next level, what he would have done.
I guess that probably would determine on what he decided the risk versus the reward was.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I could convince him that I was more trouble than it was going to be worth,
mm-hmm.
would that knife necessarily have done it by itself? Maybe not. You know, I might have been able to cut him a few times, maybe get, you know, him to reconsider, or he may just have gotten more pissed. You know, I carry a .45 as my personal sidearm weapon. And had I had it on me, I would have put every round in that magazine in his chest if I had to. You know, I understand, you know, these creatures, they're, you know, their own thing. But I'm going to protect myself. Does that mean I'm going to shoot them on sight if I ever see one again? No. They come at me like that, and I got mine on me. You know?
Right. Well, he was showing immediately some aggression, and like you said, you were minding your own business, just waiting. And you weren't stepping out of your truck. You weren't throwing rocks in the woods. He came upon you, and
yeah.
He had the first contact. And it's not like you were bulldozing. You know, you weren't out on a dirt road just intentionally. This was a highway.
Yeah.
So
I was just sitting there waiting on the repair guy to get there to change up the tire.
So
and I was going to get back on my way and go.
So when he came and you started repairing the tire, did you hear anything out after that, or get a feeling it was still around, watching, or anything like that?
It's hard to say. You know, the guy shows up, and he had, you know, the yellow flashing lights on top of his truck and whatnot. And, you know, I stuck my knife in the back of my jeans, you know, so it's not like I'm standing there with a knife in my hand while the guy's trying to work on my truck, you know?
Right. Right.
But I was, you know, while he was working on the tire, I was watching the woods.
Yeah, I don't blame you one bit. I don't blame you.
I mean, I definitely had my head on a swivel at that point.
Oh, yeah. After that event like that, absolutely. So has your boss, this was, obviously, I didn't realize it was that soon ago. Has he said anything after that, or has he just dropped the subject?
You know, I had asked him, you know, if he minded if I tried to reach out to, you know, somebody. He's like, you know, go ahead, man, just, you know, leave the company out of it, leave my name out of it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I told him about the response I got from the other group, and he was like, man, if they could have seen this truck, they wouldn't have acted like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you've kind of already said this, but what is your take for people that think these things are just, and I know when I say this, not everybody thinks this, but what is your take when people say these things are harmless? All you need to do is just leave them alone, and they're not real. And what is your response to that if someone says that or when they say that?
Well, with regards to what you said about harmless, you treat any wild animal like it's completely harmless, you're going to get hurt. Whether it's a herbivore or a carnivore. Every wild animal, especially threatened or whatever, has the capability to hurt. Even a deer. I've seen guys get gored by a deer. And those typically run more than anything else. In Georgia state bird is called a thrasher. It's about the size of a robin. It'll dive bomb the hell out of you. Just for being near the tree where its nest is at.
I didn't know that.
Obviously, is every situation like the one I experienced? No. I imagine they've probably got different personalities per individual like anything else.
That's what we think too. And that's why we tell people, don't assume anything just because you've heard one story where they're pleasant and you communicated. You have to have a profound respect for these beings that are tremendously fast, strong, and intelligent. We can't jump into their head and think what they're thinking at the moment. We don't know.
I can't say what his motivation exactly was, but he was not happy about me being there. And whether his intent was just trying to scare me off and it just escalated, because I didn't immediately run, I can't say. If I had tried to run, would he have chased me down? I don't know. Everything about him was just aggressive. It was, for all I know, for lack of a better way of saying it, could have been mating season. And he was full up on hormones. I don't know.
Right.
And, not trying to apply too much animal characteristics to him, but, I don't know. But, to anyone who would automatically assume that they're peaceful or harmless, I would say try to take the door of a semi with 2 crowbars and 3 men. See how easy it is. And realize that one of these things did this.
Yeah, that's...
I would caution anyone from taking it for granted.
Well, that's what we try to impose upon people, is that just don't go out and pick a fight with these things. If you encounter one by happenstance, the best thing you can do is don't run. If you can, and if every circumstance is going to be different. You can't say giving rules on, you would do this or do that, because it's whatever that instinct tells you to do.
Yeah, and, staring them in the eyes, now with most species, that is considered a challenge. Me personally, I have a very dominant personality with that regard, so I don't back down from that. Whereas, other people, if their personality isn't along those lines, I would probably suggest against trying to look them in the eye. You know, in that situation, I did the best that I could.
Right.
And what I felt was the best thing for me to do. Would
Right.
that necessarily be the best for everyone else? No. In that situation, you know, looking one of these things in the eye may not be the best idea. It certainly didn't seem to calm him down. But then again, there was no other way I could do it, you know?
Well, right. You were literally backed into a corner, so to speak.
Yeah.
You didn't have a lot of places to go.
And I knew that showing any kind of weakness in that situation wasn't going to help me out.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, we don't know what's in their head. We don't know what their rules are.
Exactly.
I can make some educated guesses based off of his behavior. From, you know, some of the stuff I've been reading online since this happened, I would probably guess kind of a pack mentality if I had to hazard a guess, like a wolf pack. You probably have your dominant male and a dominant female, and then various other family group members.
That's kind of what we speculate as well.
Now, is it necessarily like a wolf pack, or is it more like a group of gorillas where you have one male and several females? The way he acted doesn't really scream primate so much to me. But again, this is just based off of personal observance and, you know, experience. But I would probably guess, based off of, you know, everything that I've read since then, and what happened to me, that there's likely to be some kind of pack hierarchy. Especially the way that he reacted to a typical mammalian challenge of looking him directly in the eyes.
Yeah, that sounded like he didn't much care for that, obviously. Didn't care for that you were there, and didn't care very much that you looked at him. And I'm like you said, when you pulled that knife, he changed even more.
He glanced right at me, or he glanced right at it, but he had already growled at that point. But that, you know, after I pulled that knife, and, you know, both of us knew it was there. You know, that's when it started to get a little more physical. Did the knife escalate it? Maybe. Did me staring him in the eyes escalate it? Maybe. Would he have continued to be or grow that aggressive without it? Maybe. I mean, his entire stance was very aggressive from the very beginning before I even pulled the knife. You know, he obviously did not want me there.
Do you think after this experience that you encountered, and you've experienced a lot, not only in the military, but from this event, is this going to prevent you from enjoying the woods like you were before, or just the same with your head on a swivel a bit more?
I might keep my head on a swivel a bit more, be, you know, a little more aware of my surroundings, but it's not going to stop me. I know there's bears in the woods. I know there's mountain lions. Doesn't stop me from going. Hell, in Georgia, we got big old boar. You know? Oh,
yeah, you guys do. We've got them here, too, but you guys got them, I think, a little bigger.
But, you know, I know all these things are in the woods. You got rattlesnakes, you got boar, black bear. Any one of 100 things that could kill you. Ain't stopped me before, ain't gonna stop me now.
I was just curious. I had a feeling I knew what the answer was, but I had to
well,
ask.
I mean,
Right. I still wanted to ask, but I think that, and it depends on every situation, but people that have experienced these, typically it's kind of, it goes 50-50. 50% will say, yeah, I'm on a swivel a bit more, and then others will say, forget it. I'm done with going in the woods, but.
well, obviously, if I see one a little bit further off, I'm not going to try to get closer necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be looking for an encounter.
Right.
Whether, peaceful or aggressive. But,
well, that is an incredible, this is an incredible story. I mean, everyone we can learn from, and this was one that I think I want people to know that it's what we were saying for the longest time. There are some encounters that are peaceful, so to speak, that there's no intent or aggression, but this is a very important encounter because I want people to realize that we don't fully understand these creatures that well. We do, but we don't. We don't know what their intent is. We don't know how they are prior to coming upon us. We don't know if it's in their DNA structure of certain clans and groups that have modified their behavior a little more aggressive than, say, a clan that's in Washington or one that's in Texas. I mean, so a DNA behavior level is another aspect of it. Maybe they're just born more aggressive. We don't know. But people need to be reminded that if you're going to go out into the woods, you've got to carry some protection. Don't go by yourself. If all possible, tell people where you're going and have some means to protect you if something happens.
And as weird as it may sound, I think, especially in this situation, he really seemed to be taken aback by how loud the air horn was. And I've actually considered getting, one of those little handheld ones. You can find them in Walmart or wherever.
Mm-hmm.
Now I always, went into the woods whenever I go hiking and stuff like that. At a minimum, I do carry my sidearm. Because, again, bears, mountain lions, rattlesnakes,
Right.
If I got to protect myself, I'm going to protect myself. But I don't know. He really seemed taken aback by it, like he wasn't expecting it at all. And, every time I hit it, he kind of jerked and flinched, So I don't know if maybe loud noises might be a deterrent.
It might.
It
might, especially a noise that's foreign, that's man-made, not man yelling, but something that's got the capacity to the hertz to that we don't have the lung capacity to generate.
And, that was the whole reason I hit the air horn is because I knew I couldn't yell as loud as he roared. And so, at the time I was just trying to respond in kind. And it worked, and it took him off his footing, so to speak. And he didn't know, okay, I was confident I could handle this entire situation, and now I'm not so sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, something like that, which isn't a bad thing to have with you if you're going out in the woods anyways. If you're trying to get a hold of somebody because you've gotten hurt, air horn could work for that too.
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
But,
Can I ask you a side note question here?
Absolutely.
Out of curiosity, and this has some relevance but may not, what did your boss do with that door?
I don't know. I could try to find out, but I don't know what he did with it.
If it's not too much of a bother. If you can find out, I would be curious in just buying it. If he
I can ask him.
would you?
You know,
Yeah,
I can ask him
I know
about
it's
that.
an odd request, but if it's sitting somewhere like in a junk pile off to the side or something, I know it may not matter too much. If it's got the company sticker,
It does have the company name on the
then
door.
we can take that off or something. But
Yeah.
just want to know if he's got that door. I would love to have that door.
I could certainly ask him for
As
you.
strange as it is, I know it's a strange request, but yeah, I know he's going to look like he wanted what, but
More than likely, you know, I don't, you know, typically when, and hell, I don't know if he's even got it or not. I mean, like I said, the best I could do is ask him.
yeah, I mean, if he doesn't, no big deal. If he doesn't, if he has it and he says nah, that's fine too. It never hurts to ask. I always say it never hurts.
Yeah, you know, but yeah, I can definitely look into that. It's certainly not the weirdest request I've ever heard.
Well, I want to thank you so much for not only for the dedication and service that you going in the military and protecting us as citizens of the United States and your service there, but coming back and performing, you know, as a truck driver, it's an arduous occupation that we were talking about prior to discussing this encounter, and having enough courage to come forward and share it with us. And I'm sorry I wasn't Johnny on the spot to get back with you in time, but I tell you, it's I know we can learn from every experience, and I really appreciate you taking the call. And
Well, I appreciate, you know, the fact that you were open-minded about it, even though it may not be a typical type encounter. You know,
and yeah, I mean, in every encounter that I tell you what, after doing a lot of these, I don't even know what the typical encounter is anymore. There's so many that are so different in every circumstance and in every location, even next to homes in a huge metro complex or in a city park that's in a golf course area, or fishing or on the side of the road. I mean, this is not the first time, which is very interesting, that I've had a truck driver pull off on the side of the road and something happened. Or they're waiting on the guys to unload the trailer, and they're waiting on them, and they're in a very remote location, and something happens very similar. And very similar descriptions by the truck driver saying, look, I don't know if you know how big or how heavy a rig is or the cab, but this thing shook the cab like I was a Tonka toy.
yeah.
And that to me is enough and the trucker and most of the truck drivers that I talk to, I'm always curious on the size that they are. I said, if you don't mind, can you describe your size? And most of them are pretty big guys. I mean, they're like yourself, 6'4". They're 230, 240, up to 330 pounds. And they're saying, look, I was one guy told me he was 500 pounds one time. And even standing on the side, the running boards, he couldn't even get his rig to budge. He said when this thing stepped on the running boards, it moved the truck. It rocked it. He said so.
Big boy didn't step on the running boards, but he hit it. And he hit it hard.
Man. That's incredible.
And like I said, it wasn't even like, you know, he came back for a haymaker swing either. You know, he's standing there full, you know, flat facing me and just moving his arms, it looked like. He didn't really, you know, it didn't look like he put all his weight into it and just rocked that thing. And, you know, the only time I've ever felt that truck rock like that was when I was going through some, you know, not so good roads. The big old dips and potholes and whatnot. That's the only time I ever felt this truck rock like that.
Well, bottom line is, you know that truck so well, and you know the tolerances and how heavy and everything, that you knew that this cat had, this creature had some force. He had some strength to rock that heavy of a chunk of metal, and that's
you know, just to kind of give you an idea, a semi by itself, without even a trailer on it, is easily between 12 and 15,000 pounds. And that's with no trailer.
Man.
Just the truck itself.
Man. It's hard for us to fathom that strength, since humans don't have near that capability, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just hard for us to put in our mind's eye the amount of force that would take. Well, I tell you what, buddy, I really appreciate you sharing what happened, and I've learned that, you know, things that happen to people, it happened, and that every encounter is different. We can learn from every encounter, and if you, heaven forbid, but if you ever come across something strange or anything remotely similar, please give me a call. You can, this is my personal cell number, and you can call anytime, day or night. You can call day or night, and I really want to know. And or if you just want to chat, you can call anytime. I mean, it doesn't have to be a show, obviously.
I'd certainly like to, you know, learn more myself, because, you know, after all of this, it's got me curious, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my brother Lane had a close encounter, which is our first show, and it led him on a quest. And that was years and years and years ago, and it kind of bled off into us, and then we started adding up all the things that's happened to us, and we started saying, wait a minute, you experienced that too when you went to this location? I did too. And so we realized that it was more than just a coincidence. Things had happened over the years to us. So that kind of led us on a quest to share our stories, and we thought, well, it's kind of therapy, so we started our show. And then what it turned into, besides therapy for us, it started turning into therapy for not only us, but other people.
Yeah.
Instead of being, you know, having it bottled up, you want to share and share freely. And so I've learned,
especially with, like you had spoken earlier about people who get PTSD over encounters like this.
Yes.
In the military, that's one of the things when they're trying to help people with that is face it, acknowledge it. And, you know, especially for those people who, you know, did have a traumatic experience with one of these things, and or may not have had the training or the, you know, for the mental resilience and or the experiences to give them that mental resilience, facing it and acknowledging what happened oftentimes is the best way to help someone.
Exactly.
Who's dealing with that.
It really is. It really is. And not that you have all the answers, because we don't have all the answers, but we can give some suggestions. We can give some possibilities of why and how come. But yeah, it's what an incredible tale. Man, that's
it was certainly interesting when it happened.
Yeah, I mean, not only your first encounter, but your encounter wasn't pleasant, and he continued to escalate the situation even more so. Again, I'm glad there was some metal between you and him.
Well, I mean, like I said, if he had kept it up much more, that glass might have gone. You know, with the crack that went up right through the middle of the glass. If he had kept it up, that glass wouldn't have been there much longer. And then, you know, if he had wanted to reach in, or if he had thought about hitting the glass instead of the door.
Well, you know, it's interesting you say that, because after doing a lot of interviews now over the last year and 4 months, I've learned that most people, when they have an encounter while they're in a car or a truck, and even a semi-truck, I've not come across one person that's not said, if it wanted me, it could have got me. It would have ripped the doors right off, no doubt, based on the size and just the immense girth this thing had.
I think maybe if I hadn't hit the air horn, it might have gotten to that point, the way he was acting.
Man.
Honestly. Quick thinking on my part, and I had an air horn on my truck,
Right.
But, I was just trying to think of, trying to be as loud as he was.
Right. Right.
And that seemed to took him back. And he didn't know how to, what to do with the situation anymore. Had it not been for that, honestly, it might have been a much different, story.
Right. Well, I tell you, it's been a learning here experience, and I appreciate your time. I know it's time for you to probably hit the hay now, and
yeah.
I appreciate getting in touch with you and your patience. Please feel free to call any time whatsoever. If you can talk to your boss about the unusual requests there, I'd appreciate that. Again, this is my personal cell number, and I can't thank you enough, sir, for your time, your commitment, your service, and your courage to allow me to talk to you and to share this with others. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be able to help. If help I did.
Absolutely. I think you did. There's always people, the way we, believe is that there's people out there always listening, but they've yet to come forward. They're afraid, or they're afraid of facing ridicule, or someone is going to make fun of them. But if they can just have an environment where they're free to just discuss and chat and share, it is very liberating to at least let it go, to share. I can't promise we'll have all the answers, but we all learn, and that's what we're doing. We're learning together, and we're sharing together, and it makes everyone feel a little bit better that they're not alone. More importantly, that they're not alone. But thank you again. I appreciate it. I'll let you hit the hay, buddy, and just thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Not a problem.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Take care. Bye. So I wanted to follow up with a little bit of post-commentary here that I think you would find very, very interesting. The gentleman did call me back regarding the door that was damaged, that they removed. It took 3 men with crowbars to remove. And what I found was very interesting when he contacted me back the following day. He said that in speaking with his boss about the door, that his boss said the next day there were 2 men from the quote-unquote insurance company that came out to inspect the door, but also they took the door, which I found very, very interesting. In speaking with this gentleman, we both agreed that that was very strange, because I know in the automobile accident, I've worked enough clients having motor vehicle accidents, that typically cars, when they are totaled, for instance, they are purchased sometimes by salvage yards for pieces and parts, things like that. But one semi-truck door was removed by the insurance company. Usually when insurance companies go to inspect damage that they're going to replace, or if they've totaled out a car, they will go and inspect. It's not anything unusual to go on site for the insurance company, the insurer, and take pictures and look at it and say, yep, it's totaled, yep, we need to replace it. But why take a door? Why take one piece? That'd be the equivalent of taking a door from a car that's dented. Why take the door? I mean, they don't care about the door, typically, insurance companies. So this made me wonder
if those gentlemen truly were from the insurance company. As we both agreed, we were talking together about the strangeness of this. So the owner did not have the door. He said it went to the insurance company that they took the door, which he even said his boss said that was a bit strange. And I said, yes, that is. That's very strange. If, in fact, those gentlemen represented the insurance company, which at this point I'm doubting, highly doubting. Now, here's the thing. We don't know how, if these gentlemen, if they were from this secret agency that we always speak of, the Men in Black, so to speak, how did they know about this? Because there was just a few people that this gentleman disclosed the story to. He told his boss, rightly so, because it was his boss's truck. It was the company truck. He owned the truck. So he hadn't told anyone else besides his wife, and that was it. So I find that very, very strange. Now, could these two gentlemen represent the insurance company? Sure, it's possible. Why they wanted the door? It's a bit strange unless new policy says that they take the item damaged. But still, that just doesn't make sense that they just took a door. And why take the door? Who cares about the door? Well, the only way in my mind that makes sense, again, just putting it together, is that they knew how the door was damaged. Or someone knew how the door was damaged, how and what occurred that evening when he was parked on the side of the road. And somehow someone knew, and that's why they took the door for evidence. They didn't want anything out there. So I found that interesting. I was a bit saddened that the door was gone because I wanted the door. So, but anyway, I thought that was a very interesting tidbit of information that he called me the very next day with that info, and he found it very surprising that the door was gone as well. In addition to, this was just a very scary, terrifying encounter. I can't imagine if this gentleman would have been in a just regular truck or a car, what would have happened. This Bigfoot was obviously very upset. It showed aggression, physical contact on his vehicle. Thank goodness the gentleman would happen to be in a very large, heavy-duty sized truck, semi-truck. Otherwise, we just don't know what would have happened from here. So I really appreciated this gentleman coming forward, and especially after being semi-ridiculed, calling previously to another group. He didn't disclose who it was, and I didn't expect him to, but that the first group basically didn't believe him because of the aggression of this. So my point to an ending is that we would like to say that all these Bigfoot are very docile type of creatures, but the fact of the matter is, I view them in many ways the analogy of personalities of humans. In the fact that I'm not calling them humans by no means, but what I'm saying is that they have personalities, just like humans sometimes, where you have humans that want to hurt other humans, that are aggressive for no reason, that want to hurt people. But in the same token, you have people that are good nature, that are productive citizens, that want to do good, want to help people. They're courteous, kind. So I think you have the same type of personality traits in these beings, these creatures as well. But for the most part, I would actually give an air of warning no matter what, no matter where you're at. This is why we always say have something to protect yourself besides playing a flute out for them. I'm not saying mistreat them. I'm not saying pick a fight. I'm just saying have some means of protection and be aware of your surroundings. Just be aware that they do exist. Just allow 1 to 2% in your mind that these might exist, and not be paranoid, but just be alert to your surroundings. That's all we're asking. For many of you that's not had an encounter, just be aware of your surroundings. Be aware that these creatures do exist, and therefore you will be open to hearing and learning from these shows that we share these true encounters of people that had terrifying moments that they had no idea that these creatures existed either. So I want to thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you guys. Until next time, be safe and be alert. We're Cryptid Brothers Investigation of Oklahoma. Take care.